Hello again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting here in Las Vegas from Rigel Studios. The show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. We are, Fired Up is on our website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. You can find that at firedupwithbobirwin.com. A new show is posted every Thursday at around 5 p.m. Pacific time. New shows also appear on YouTube and numerous other media. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon. It's on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area all over Nevada, except at the moment it's still not in Las Vegas. Working on it every place else. Questions and comments, you can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder, which is 702-257-1060. If you leave contact information, we will respond by email, text, or telephone. Questions directed to our guest will be forwarded, or if the guest leaves his own, which my guest today will, you can contact him directly. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by any mainstream media. So we always present a few for our listeners' education. Most are good shootings, some are questionable, sometimes they're bad shootings actually, but all are educational for firearms owners. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. The advice given on this show might not apply to listeners in jurisdictions other than Nevada or California, as I have a California attorney on today. Incidents are as reported, except the names of those involved, the participants involved, are altered or omitted so we don't embarrass anybody who shouldn't be embarrassed until they're already in prison. My guest today is California and Nevada attorney Donald J. Green. Don, a bit of your background, if you would, for anybody on this station who hasn't heard of you.
All right.
Hard to find one.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Bob, and thanks Rigel Studios for allowing me to appear a couple of times a month. My name is Don Green, and I do a lot of firearms work. The emphasis of my practice is gun-related, and that is defense of people who use firearms, those who are trying to purchase firearms, but there's a problem with their background. We can look into that. We're working with people who are making applications for federal firearms licenses to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We work in connection with getting backgrounds cleared, checked, evaluated, or corrected with the FBI, whose headquarters for these types of material is in West Virginia. And we also provide legal advice to a number of people at gun shows, and we'll be at a gun show this weekend. And Bob and I were at a gun show at the Convention Center here in Las Vegas now just a week and a half ago. You can contact me by my cellular at 702-409-8239, or go online and the search engine, Donald J. Green, gun show lawyer, Donald J. Green, gun lawyer, something like that. All right, well, thank you, Bob.
Okay. This first story comes from WRAL-TV. It was reported on the 20th of last month in Fayetteville, North Carolina. A Hoke County commissioner who is currently running for lieutenant governor had a frightening encounter over the weekend. When he returned to his townhouse in Greenville, he discovered it had been ransacked and the burglars were still inside. To take a break from campaigning, he returned to his secondary home in Greenville Saturday around noon. The commissioner, his name is Alan Thomas, stays on the second floor of a 3-level townhouse at the Carolina Creek Apartments. He saw several men in the downstairs common area, but he assumed they were guests of the resident who lives on that first floor. The apartments in the unit share a common downtown area on the first floor where the kitchen is and so forth. So he went upstairs. He found that his bedroom had been ransacked. He locked his bedroom door, called 911, and took out a shotgun that was hidden in the room that he was in. It had been ransacked, but they didn't find a shotgun. The intruders came upstairs and knocked on the door, saying they had left several items in the bedroom, including knives and a stun gun. Thomas cocked his, I believe he means chambered his shotgun, which he says was loaded with 3 rounds. He also hunts ducks, and that's had a limiter in it. I'm paraphrasing his statement here because it kind of rambled on. He said, I was telling them this was my limit, he said. According to that, he warned them not to try and enter his bedroom. If they came through the door, I would shoot. The suspects responded that they had left a phone in the bedroom and they wanted it back. That would be handy for the burglar to leave his cell phone in the room. I didn't see a phone, so I just couldn't tell if he was just trying to gain access. I don't know whether or not he had a weapon. The video posted on Facebook, he was videoing part of this. You can hear the shotgun being loaded. You can also hear him talking to someone through the bedroom door. The standoff lasted for several minutes before the men decided to leave without trying to enter the room. The commissioner never fired his weapon, which is generally good. The Greenville police arrived on scene about 10 minutes after he made the 911 call. We'll talk about that. But no one has been arrested in connection with the incident as of this report. He said he feared for his life and recorded the incident in case he had to shoot. This is really a perfect reaction. Warnings were given, 911 was called. The recording certainly adds to the clarity of what happened if there is any investigation. Note the response time was 10 minutes. That's why you always need a firearm in your residence. We're going to look at this. I'll let Don talk about it, and then I'm going to add something else and tail end here.
Okay, Bob, your viewers and your listeners really need to listen to this case and what's going on. We're going to look at the facts and then apply the law to those facts. The commissioner was perfectly okay going into his bedroom, locking the door, and getting his weapon. He was correct in not shooting through the door. When the men came up pounding on the door, one's asking for this, one's asking for the cellular phone, it's not in here. Finally, he says, I've reached my limit. He states that he doesn't know if the perpetrators have a weapon. Let's apply the law. The law in California and Nevada is that you do not have to be presented with a weapon in order to use a weapon in self-defense. The law does require some proportionality, but 3 or 4 guys pounding on your door at your house, they don't need a weapon and they're not there collecting for the Red Cross. These guys are going to do substantial, if not great bodily injury to you, even if they don't have a weapon. So that's good there. Now, I would ask for a jury instruction, again, that you do not have to have a weapon presented to you in order to defend if he did shoot. Here's the problem in this case. And this is why, in California, the commissioner is sitting in jail on Boucher Street in Los Angeles. Yep. That is because he had the presence of mind to turn on his phone or his camera and record it to Facebook in case, what? There's a shooting? Where's the fear? That's what I would argue if I was the district attorney, that the fear had dissipated even for the briefest of moments. Once the fear dissipates, it's gone unless it was presented with something else, like they broke through, they had weapons, and they were going to kill him. When you have the presence of mind to put it on Facebook, I guarantee you, you're going to go to jail in California. You might not, in Nevada, you might be in jail for a while, or you're definitely going to be detained. But your viewers and your listeners have to pay attention. Don't put it on Facebook. If you're on with 911, leave the call on 911. Don't turn on your other device, your tablet, your other cellular phone, whatever. That's my take.
I agree. We're adding something here in that the guy is running for office. He's running for lieutenant governor in North Carolina at the moment. So I looked him up just as to see if he has a chance of winning. the North Carolina race for lieutenant governor is like the Democrats that are running for president now. There's about 20 of them, literally, ex-prosecutors, an ex-assemblyman, an ex-congressman, an ex-state attorney general. They're virtually all Democrats also. This gentleman happens to be a Democrat. So I don't think, as good as this sounds, he has much of a chance of winning. But on the video of him, he's obviously an articulate individual. And it's hard to argue, except to Don's point of putting the evidence out there for everybody is generally a mistake.
Yes.
Because you know what happens with stuff on Facebook and people start deleting things and adding their own tidbits and then rebroadcasting and so forth. God knows what that video is going to look like. I'm sure some of his opposing candidates will use it
Yes.
in his election. But anyway, it's an interesting case, and I understand exactly what he was. As you say, Don, he was spot on until
that happened.
he
Correct.
had the presence of mind. It's kind of like the thing we have where people remember how many shots they fired in a real gunfight.
Yeah, they never
If they
remember.
remember how many shots they fired, they weren't in a panic.
Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Well, that was Clint Eastwood, but we'll never know. This next story comes from ABC News on the 22nd of January, February, March. In Cords Lake, Arizona, a grandmother shot a home invader suspect after he broke in, refused to leave, and got into a fight with her husband. According to the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, a 42-year-old male broke into the home near Concords Lake Drive and Stagecoach, if you know where that is, around 7:30 in the evening. Deputies say the intruder demanded money from the grandmother and grabbed both her arms during a struggle. Her husband heard the commotion and told the subject to leave several times. The grandmother was able to get free while her husband struggled with the intruder. She retrieved a handgun, warned the intruder she was armed, and demanded that he leave. This 42-year-old intruder advanced toward her, and she fired several shots, hitting him at least once. He eventually got into a vehicle outside and drove off. Deputies say the wounded suspect was found at a nearby home where he had collapsed. He was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. So far, so good. The woman's grandchildren, age 3, 5, and 12, and their parents, got that? The grandmother's parents were at home at the time. The grandmother suffered minor injuries in the struggle. She's okay. No arrests have been made, though the charges of robbery, burglary, and criminal trespassing are likely against the suspect after he's released from the hospital. That's cool. The case is still under investigation, including, interesting enough, determining why he picked that particular home and family. No ages were given in the initial reports to protect the privacy of the intended victims, which is nice on the part of the Sheriff's Department. In these types of incidents, it's common for a home to be targeted because some inside information was on the victims. Apparently, the sheriff's investigators suspect this is what happened. That's why they want a list of who had access, workmen, and so forth and so on. So advice here is try to limit access to your home to persons you do not know or those that you don't fully trust. Comments on this? Good shoot.
Yes, it is. Even in California. Here are the points for your viewers and your listeners. Number 1, you have the right to self-defense in your home, and there is no duty to retreat. Notice that she went to get a handgun. About 3 years ago, we had a case here in Clark County where a son shot the father. The father had been beating the son for a long period of time. The father had been beating the mother, and it actually had some kind of battery domestic violence case in the late 80s, early 90s. This father was advancing towards the son. The son went into the bedroom, retrieved the father's handgun, came out into the hallway, and fired several shots into the body of his father, killing him. The son was arrested by the Henderson Police Department for first-degree murder. The suspect eventually pled guilty to a second-degree murder for which it's life in prison, but it's a minimum of 20 years. Why? Well, they said because he fired several shots into the body of his father. There's no law that says how many shots you can fire. In this case, she said she fired several shots in self-defense in her home, 7:30 p.m. at night in Arizona. The fear when she went to get the firearm did not go away because, as Bob points out, there are minor children in the house. She's the grandmother. Her parents are in the house, the great-grandparents. So it's still a good defense, even if, let's say, the perpetrator didn't shoot. Intruders in the home have no business in your home. Now, if this happened in a business, at a storefront, a cellular store, the lady sells trinkets for a smoke shop, whatever, would she still have that same right? I think it's limited because, Bob, you were an expert in a case where there was a robbery at a shop where the young male shot somebody and eventually got a deal, but it was still a felony.
Yep.
But in this case, it's a good shooting, even in California. Again, self-defense in the home is almost absolute, so long as you don't have a machine gun or a .50 caliber Barrett, which is illegal in California. So you're going to be okay. The woman's going to be fine, even if charges are not filed. She's still going to be okay. Whether or not there'll be a civil suit is a separate story.
All right. We're going to, I want to digress just for a second and talk about, we've got some sponsors coming up. I'm not probably going to put any commercials in this show itself because we're really pressed for time between that and the gun show Don and I are going to be at this weekend. But I do want to mention we have on our website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, there's an adjacent website that is titled Fired Up with Bob Irwin Store.com. And that, if you go to that website, you can find all sorts of interesting things, some of my books and whatnot, but we have a lot of logo merchandise. If I can figure out, see, the cameras are backwards, just like the weatherman, and when I tip it this way or that way. We got these new hats that are, there's the front, embroidered. They're in orange camo. We've got Aussie hats that look like this in the same pattern, and t-shirts and ladies' tank tops and so forth. So I would appreciate if you'd go to that website, and that's firedupwithbobiRwinStore.com, and take a look and order something. It helps keep us on the air and pay the cameraman who insists on being paid for some reason. One would think, I'll tell you where to send a petition that we should have a free cameraman for this show, but I'm working on the wording of that. You know a good attorney that can set that up for me, Don? Anyway, we have had in Nevada some gigantic changes in our proposed laws when the Democrats took over. If you saw last week's show, we talked with Chris Eifelt of CCS Gunsmithing about that. Don has additional information now, new things that are proposed, and where we're going, and I'm going to give him the floor to talk about that for just a bit.
Thank you, Bob. The following cases have direct relevance to gun owners in Nevada for the following reasons. Nevada, last week there was a heated debate on the bump stocks. There's been heated debate on the red flag laws, which will allow the neighbor, the family member, the policeman, the therapist, the psychiatrist, the school teacher, whoever, to say that Mr. Jones is a danger and he has firearms and go seize those firearms. We already have a law in the books which allows the police, law enforcement, or family members to have someone detained and placed into protective custody for mental evaluation. The gun red flag law goes further than that. Now, in Nevada, as to bump stocks, here's what's pertinent. Last week, a gun store in Texas filed a lawsuit against the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in the United States Court of Federal Claims in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Court of Claims in Washington, D.C. is a highly specialized court in which the United States is a civil plaintiff or defendant. If you have a claim for more than $10,000 against the United States, they stole your land, they took over your cows, whatever. They made you get rid of your bump stocks. You file a lawsuit in the U.S. Court of Claims in Washington, D.C. There's no jury, but these are all experienced lawyers and judges who can see right through whether the government has a legitimate claim. But these guys filed an absolutely brilliant, it's almost a thesis on the practicalities of what the ATF did with defining bump stocks twice during the Obama administration, approved the bump stocks. Original approval was because they needed to have the patent application, and the material which was sent to the ATF was that it was to help handicapped or disabled people to fire the weapon. Well, the bump stock has been perverted by anti-gun pundits to say that it makes the weapon fully automatic. It doesn't. The AR-15 will fire just as fast with other mechanisms and means other than the bump stock. And then the ATF, back in November or December, files a notice and comment period of a proposed regulation to outlaw bump stocks, which fall under the category as making the weapon a fully automatic machine gun for which you have to have a special license or otherwise it's illegal. The notice and comment period ended in March of 2019. Under the Federal Administrative Procedure Act, you have 90 days from the date of the proposed regulation to make your notice and comment. At the end of the 90 days, during the notice and comment period, if the government doesn't change the regulation, it becomes law. Immediately, this company, which manufactures and sells bump stocks, had to destroy some $78,000, $80,000 worth of bump stocks. That's their injury. These were perfectly legal items prior to that date in March. On that day, they become illegal and literally make the manufacturer, the company, the corporation, those who are involved in it, those who possess it, felons under federal law, for which, if they're convicted, they're going to go to prison and never be able to touch firearms. Well, the Court of Claims, they filed under the Fifth Amendment for the taking without due process of law and without just compensation, because the regulation actually says this is how you destroy the bump stock. Destroy your property, but we're not giving you a nickel. And here's a company that's out some $80,000. So I have people who own bump stocks, and they say, can I file the suit? I ask them, what is your injury? What do you mean? Physical injury? No. Your legal injury. They say they don't have one. And I said, yes, you do. Your injury is that you must give up your property to the government without just compensation, which is specifically prohibited by the Fifth Amendment. And that Fifth Amendment has been in the U.S. Constitution since 1796, 4 years after the signing of the Constitution, and now 20 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And if you read the preamble to the first 10 amendments, it says in that preamble that these amendments have come about through the Convention of States. That is, the majority of the states agreed on a Convention of the States, not the U.S. government, to limit the powers of government. I have never seen that ever argued in any brief, but we're going to argue it. That's the preamble to the Bill of Rights, which says that. It's to limit the federal government. The second is that the Pennsylvania District Court, not federal, but state court, is allowing a case to go through on AR-15s in California, semi-automatics with the capacity magazines. That's a great ruling by the judge. But the judge hasn't made a final ruling. She's only made a preliminary ruling that the case can go forward because the state of Pennsylvania filed papers to try to throw out the lawsuit, similar to what would happen in Nevada. Her order is brilliant. Second, we have Duncan versus Becerra. Remember, 2 weeks ago, the final permanent injunction and judgment in favor of Virginia Duncan and others, saying that the California ban on more than 10-round magazines was unconstitutional. Final judgment was entered. That was on that Friday. A week later, that Tuesday, like April 2nd, Judge Benitez, a Bush appointee, said that, in all fairness, I'm going to stay. That is, hold off on my final order until this coming Friday. That was a week ago. And that Friday said that anybody who bought, manufactured, transferred, or received a more than 10 round magazine between the one Friday in March and the first Friday in April, you can keep or sell and possess your what's allegedly a large capacity magazine. You can keep it, okay? But now, the portion of his order which stays that is that the enforcement of the law is stayed. Now, you can't go out and get a magazine in Nevada at the gun show this weekend and take it to California. That would be against the law. But if you had it before, then you're okay. Okay, how are they going to prove? How are they going to prove that you bought it in Nevada? Well, don't be surprised. California Department of Justice has real long arms. They got probably people at the gun show with cameras in their glasses, cameras on their phones, looking at people, following them, and taking down the plates of all these California plates. And I guarantee you, there are at least a couple hundred cars at the gun show this weekend. They're going to have California plates. Guarantee you.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, possible suits in Nevada would be the bump stock. We got a guy with an injury, and he is somewhat disabled. Not totally. We got a guy in a wheelchair who's got more than 10 round capacity magazines. Can he defend himself with only 10 rounds when the people busting in have got high power, high capacity Glocks? I don't know. And then there's litigation on the red flag laws out of state, but right now it looks as if they're going to be upheld. So that's what's going on right now. And if people want to give me a call or go online and send me an email, my email is crimelv7777@aol.com, or they can call me on my cellular at 702-409-8239. Now, last point. We're not soliciting cases. We don't do that. But if someone comes to me and says, Donald, I have this, then we will certainly consider it.
There is an awful fluid law right now, and we were discussing after the last show Don was on a couple of weeks ago that with the change we had in the law that allows local jurisdictions to make their own gun laws now, we no longer have state preemption, but local jurisdiction, the county, the city, the township can make their own gun laws, that we may have gun registration back for handguns or all long guns, and universal background checks, and gun shows being eliminated. We didn't get that yet. We're still having this one at the pavilions. It's entirely possible this may be the last one.
After June 1st or October 1st, depending on the effective date of the law.
So, and you know, what Don said was correct about people there. We always have stings at the gun show. ATF, New York Police Department, because Bloomberg wants to make cases against people selling guns that might end up in New York. All sorts of people, and just left-wing press that offers, you know, to make illegal transactions. Don't do it. We will win this fight when we win the next election, but don't put yourself in jail in the meantime. You can check our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains dozens of our recent episodes. You tell the engineer we're going to skip the third story that I had on here. I'll probably put it on next week's show because it's a really cute story. We are asking you to patronize our sponsors when you see them. There we go. We're looking. Anyway, we'll be back next Thursday on our website and on YouTube at the American Guns and Glory Network. Please share these broadcasts with your friends. However you receive the show, it's on a lot of media that we don't even know it's on there until I get a call from someplace in Indonesia that says, I saw your show. Mm-hmm. All you need to do is when you see the show wherever, there'll be a button on your computer somewhere to punch for you to subscribe to it, and it'll come to your cell phone or your computer every Thursday late afternoon our time. Be sure to go to firedupwithboberwinstore.com and look at some merchandise while we're doing that. Capitalism wins every time. We'll be back next week, and Don will be back with me next week.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll see you at the Crossroads Gun Show this upcoming weekend. We'll have a lot more information in person. Mm-hmm. can tell you that. Y'all have a nice afternoon. Thanks for watching Fired Up. Thank you, Don.
Thank you again, Bob.